Hey everyone, I'm Matt McEwan from sportsbettingdime.com. Proud to be joined by Bob Wankel of sportsbettingdime.com and Crossing Broad as well. Bob and I are here to talk about ESPN Bet, which just announced they are launching November 14th. Bob, one of the biggest things that we saw out of ESPN Bet when this deal was struck was they're looking for a 20% market share. Now, that's a pretty big share when you consider Barstool Sportsbook brings over about a 3% market share. But I want to talk with you here about some of the pluses that they have on their side, some of the ways they can get there. Number one, I think it would be silly for us to not mention their fantasy and the fact they have 20 million plus fantasy users. They are the biggest fantasy provider in the world right now. But number two is the broadcast they have here. So I want to talk with you about how creative can they get here when it comes to their broadcasts, as well as what are some of the holes in the market that we see right now where we think ESPN Bet might be able to serve bettors in a better way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, it's an ambitious target. 20% is pretty significant. It'll require a sizable jump for them. But I think that the real variable here, the one thing that everybody has to kind of key in on is how much does that ESPN brand really help vault this thing to the top? I mean, for years, I'm in my mid 30s. You think about sports and ESPN is that brand that it kind of comes right behind it, for us. And so I think that having that brand power can do something here. I mean, and it's not just, hey, I recognize or I trust that name. It's how can they leverage sports broadcasts? How can they leverage their programming? Will they make further alterations to it? Like, what will those implementations be? And I think that that's going to be critical. Because we all know that you have to have a quality product, and that's first and foremost in terms of retention. But getting people through the door, it's all going to be about how can they bring it to the user and make it something that is mainstream, and maybe even invite bettors that aren't currently in the game into the game. And I think that's going to be a big thing that they'll have to answer here.
One of the trickier parts here too, Bob, is I think we've all seen the way that other broadcasts have tried to incorporate betting. We've seen the mass commercials everywhere for get this promo, bet 5, get 200, and there is a large portion of people who do not like it, who feel they're just getting beat over the head with betting, and they're not yet desensitized to it. I hear a lot of comparisons to alcohol, right? Where at this point, I think everybody kind of overlooks when they see whether it's a Corona commercial or a whatever liquor, right? It's just common for us now. Whereas betting still isn't there yet, maybe, right? We've only been seeing it for 5-ish years or so now in certain states anyways. But I think that's going to be critical here is how they implement it. If it's just a simple beat everybody over the head with it, I don't know that's going to be successful. It's how can they incorporate it in a tasteful way? And one of the things here that I think is very beneficial for them is the different channels they obviously have. Right? We're not talking, this isn't just one ESPN channel they have. They already take advantage of different channels with the Manning cast on Monday Night Football as well. But also, just heard news that they bought Hulu, so some extra streaming power there. So they have options here where they could potentially just run a betting-focused broadcast while still allowing the people that maybe don't want that yet to continue watching sports as they have been, and maybe just slightly, subtly incorporate some betting to those people.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had a little bit of a test case with Fox Bet previously. There was a time, when Fox Bet launched and this thing got rolling in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, we saw where I'm at in South Jersey, we saw a lot of appetite for Fox Bet. And I thought at the time, wow, they have the rights to the National Football League. This is a slam dunk. How can it lose? And in time, Fox Bet sort of fizzled out and everything sort of turned over to FanDuel, right? it's not just as simple as saying we have a good brand, we have the games, this will convert or this will create a staying power. And you mentioned the word being desensitized and the desensitization to this. I think that there is a little bit of that already. And then I do think that there are some people that are flat out annoyed by it. So the question that ESPN has to answer is, how do we do this in a meaningful way where we don't annoy our viewership, but we also capture viewership? And, you talked about the idea of like the simulcast and how they use Manningcast for Monday Night Football. I do think that there's going to be opportunities with that. They have multiple channels. It'll be easy to flip one of those over, maybe entirely at some point, but at least in the short term for certain games, high profile games, maybe they do it. We've seen with the national championship in college football, we've done the coach's room. They've done the Manningcast portion of it. And then it's how hard would it be to just add on and, hey, here's an all betting broadcast. And it's something that we've seen here with regional sports networks as well. PointsBet, prior to kind of becoming Fanatics, has done some work with NBC Sports. So around here, we've seen Sixers games become, simulcasted for betting purposes on a secondary channel. And it's something that these networks have tested out, but I think that ESPN's going to do it on a bigger and probably grander stage in time. And it's going to create a very unique opportunity for them for sure.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen it perfected yet. And I'm, as a bettor myself, I'm excited to see what ESPN comes up with here, what they serve the user. So the other part here, Bob, that I want to talk about is, do you see any holes in the betting market from a user perspective, from a bettor's eye? Is there anything you can think of that ESPN Bet might be able to capture as a bit of a unique feature? I've got one here, but I want to give you an opportunity first.
Yeah, certainly. I'm not privy to what they will do here specifically or what they may do in time to try to fill in some of these holes. But I know as somebody that bets and has consistently bet on basically a daily basis throughout the sports calendar over the last 4 or 5 years, I would tell you that it feels a little bit like the returning player has gotten overlooked. And it's not just about, scope of markets. And sometimes I think some of the pricing, especially on same game parlays, is a little bit questionable. But I would just say that there is an opportunity, I think, to really capture a bettor once they're through the door. And so much focus right now is placed on, hey, bet 5, get X amount of dollars back, or get this, it's not a risk-free bet anymore, but whatever you want to call it, a no sweat bet, like DraftKings and FanDuel refer to it. That's all fine and well, but it's so new player and so acquisition focused that I do think that one of these operators eventually has to really bear down and say okay, we've done a great job with player acquisition, but how do we ensure that people will continually come back? And I know for instance, and I'm not going to single out any operators here, if you're a loyal customer, you might get some exclusives, some exclusive odds boosts, exclusive free bets or bonus bets, I should call them. But I just almost feel like it's not really an engaging daily experience for returning players sometimes. It's we got you. Your money's already in our account. It's already loaded up. You'll stick around. And I do think that there has to be a way, and it doesn't just go, it's not just about incentive. It's about truly creating an all-encompassing experience where you're this is my brand. And that's where I do think that ESPN has a unique advantage. You see FanDuel investing in content. You see DraftKings investing in content. ESPN doesn't have to really make much of an additional investment in content because they are a content network with broadcast rights. They have such a unique and organic advantage in that way that I do wonder if they're going to be, and I'm not smart enough to know how, but can you bridge the gap from your content to the bettor and almost just kind of infuse it where you feel like it's all one ecosystem, so to speak. And that's what I think that they're going to have to do if they want to get to 20%. Can they do it? We're going to find out.
I totally agree with you. I think one of the most interesting things here is going to be how can ESPN Bet incorporate stats in a meaningful way within the ESPN Bet app? Because right now, you have other operators attempting to do this a little bit. I don't think it's in your face enough, though, and I don't think they go deep enough, right? What do you do when you go to ESPN Bet, you open it up, or I shouldn't say ESPN Bet because you're not betting there yet. But you open up whatever operator it is you're betting with, and you see this bet, you say, I should look into that bet a little bit. I should do some research. Do I think X player will go over this number of points? Well, let me go look. Let me go look at what they've done in the last few games, right? And often you leave that betting app. ESPN has a really unique, like you said, advantage here. You might not need to leave the app. Now, I don't know if this is going to happen at launch, but I think that's something that they can probably do the best job in the market serving the user. The other one that I wanted to bring up, which has been a bit of a hole in the market for a while, this has been a common complaint among some of these more seasoned bettors, it's one of the most popular player props bet in the NFL. That's the anytime touchdown. And one of the biggest frustrations right now is no operator offers you the other side of it. They don't offer you to bet no, that player will not score a touchdown. And due to that, you've seen some operators take advantage of this and really start running these odds up. And you can call it, charging vig, or they're not even at that point. It's not even charging vig. It's just offering a really lousy price on Travis Kelce. Used to be Derrick Henry. Now it's Christian McCaffrey scoring every game. He's almost unbettable at the odds you're seeing.
We have around this market, in the Philly market, Jalen Hurts to score a touchdown. I mean, sometimes you'll get that number on minus 120, and you're like, okay. Yeah. And I get it, but it's tough. So if you're going to play that angle of it, offering the alternative side of it is something that would definitely be intriguing, I think, to a lot of bettors.
And what I can say is, for those who may be in the know of other Penn properties, they are offering this right now, and they are the only operator I have seen offering this, and it's fantastic because it holds them accountable for leaving the yes odds at something reasonable. Because if they don't, well, you can jump over to the no. You can take advantage of them maybe being a little too short over on that side. Right. So I think that's something, again, just with it being such a popular prop to bet, I think that's something they can use to their advantage here. A really nice pull. And something to, like you were saying earlier, something to keep the user there as well, right? Most bettors are putting I shouldn't say most, but a lot of bettors are putting an anytime touchdown bet in most weeks, right? Well, where are they going to do that? It might be ESPN Bet is the home of that moving forward, right?
And the one thing that I kind of neglected to mention when we talk about this, it's like, well, okay, we've mentioned ESPN's brand power, but is ESPN in a place where the general sports audience and the general sports viewing public has a connection to the different personalities? Do you feel a connection to Scott Van Pelt? Because if you do, and then Scott Van Pelt's telling you about this book, and they're constantly featuring it on that SportsCenter programming, I think then you feel more like, all right, I like this guy. We're talking about this. It just creates a natural pathway that leads into using it. If you're a big College Game Day guy, like I love College Game Day. I think it's one of the best sports programs on any channel, anytime. It's must view for me, 9 a.m. local time, Saturday morning, like I'm in. And if we're talking about ESPN Bet, does that forge a connection with those personalities and then me wanting to use the product later in the day? And, they're going to have to figure it out. Like that's really, to me, one of the most fascinating things about this, from somebody that's in the betting industry, but also is just a huge sports fan, is how will they accomplish this? Because it can't just be, they have a daily wager program and it's good. And it's like really informative. I watch it frequently. It's good content, but it can't just be, odds supplied by ESPN Bet in passing. Like that's not going to be enough, right? Like there's got to be a real reason to drive that connection. And so I'm really fascinated to see it. And I know that there's implications across the industry with this launch, and we're going to talk about that. But I'm very, very excited for this, because really, outside of state launches, outside of the market expanding across the United States, things get a little stagnant sometimes. So it's fun to see a new player come in here and shake things up a little bit.
Absolutely, and then the personalities part that you mentioned there is massive. I think Pat McAfee is such an interesting personality here, and such a big voice. it's so funny, not to get too political here or anything, but you look at some of these big names. Take Joe Rogan for example, right? Who's absolutely massive, but you also have a pretty large population that despises him. That like will not support anything he does. Another great example is Elon Musk. Right? You've got a ton of Musk super fans, but you've also got a lot of Musk haters out there.
Right.
Maybe this is my. I don't think I have a bias towards McAfee, but maybe this is me living in my vacuum potentially. I don't see a lot of McAfee hate out there. The only bits that I've seen really have generally come from the fact that he has Aaron Rodgers on his show, and the anti-vax and thing there that goes on. So that's really been the only kind of section of people that have spoken negative, at least that I've seen speak negative of him. But again, maybe I'm living in a vacuum there. But from what I can see, he's just a kind of widely beloved personality. And I think that's a massive, massive player to have on your side.
Well, at the very least, he's a huge ratings draw. He's been given a lot of creative liberty with his show. I mean, there was a lot of concern about what that show would look like when it came to ESPN, and I think the integrity of the show has essentially been the same. And I think that even if you're not a McAfee person, right? Like to your point, even if you're not a McAfee person, you might be a Van Pelt person. You're tuning into SportsCenter. You're tuning into the, Pardon the Interruption and Around the Horn. And like, there's just such a variety of programming where it might not be for a certain show might not be for one person or one section of the audience, but invariably they're going to have something that will be for the audience. And so you're getting a really wide sample of audience coming through that programming cycle. And I think that having that type of reach is the difference maker here.
Yeah, agreed. So again, Bob and I both extremely excited here to see what ESPN Bet brings. Again, they are launching, just announced, launching November 14th. So get ready. SBD will have your best promo code to sign up when this does launch. So make sure you're on the lookout there. We'll be back more, just talking more ESPN Bet. Thanks, everyone.